He walked up to the security checkpoint with his service dog, only to be told the dog couldn't sit pass, until the pilot SIP's voice crackled over the intercom, inviting him to first class. Walter Ramirez approached the TSA security line, his golden retriever, Buddy, walking calmly by his left side, a harness designating him as a service animal clearly visible. The fluorescent lights of the terminal hummed, casting a sterile glare on the bustling travelers. Walter clutched his boarding pass, his knuckles white. He'd flown many times with Buddy, but a knot of anxiety always tightened in his chest during this part of the journey. The lead TSA agent, a man with a severe expression and a neatly trimmed mustache, held up a hand. "Stop right there, sir. The dog can't come through here." Walter's breath hitched. "Not again. Please, not this." "He's a service animal," Walter stated, his voice steadier than he felt. He reached into his worn satchel for the documentation, each movement precise, practiced. Buddy, sensing his handler's distress, let out a soft whine and nudged his head against Walter's leg. The agent remained unmoved, arms crossed. "We've had issues with pets being passed off as service animals. You'll need to provide more than just that vest, sir." Passengers behind them began to shift, their impatient sighs audible over the clatter of bins and the drone of the X-ray machine. Walter felt a flush creep up his neck. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "I have all his papers," Walter insisted, his hand trembling slightly as he offered the laminated ID card and a letter from his doctor. The agent took them, his eyes scanning the documents with deliberate slowness. "He's just looking for a reason. Any reason." The harsh, antiseptic smell of hand sanitizer wafted from a nearby dispenser, mingling unpleasantly with the faint odor of jet fuel. Walter's old uniform shirt, worn for comfort during travel, felt suddenly constricting under the strap of his carry-on bag. He focused on keeping his breathing even, trying to project an air of calm he didn't possess. The agent finally looked up. Before we continue with the story, be sure to let us know where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments. We love learning about our viewers. Now let's get back to the story. The agent tilted his head. "These documents could be for any dog. How do we know this specific dog is trained for a specific task related to your disability?" he asked, his tone accusatory. Walter's jaw tightened. "He's trained to assist with my PTSD. He can sense an oncoming anxiety attack and provide grounding." He hated having to explain the intimate details of his condition to a stranger in a crowded airport. "It's none of his business why I need him, only that I do, and that he's legitimate." Buddy, ever attuned to Walter's emotional state, sat down, placing a reassuring paw on Walter's foot. Another TSA agent, a younger woman, joined her colleague, looking from Walter to Buddy and back to the documents. "What specific tasks does he perform?" she asked, her voice less confrontational but still firm. Walter repeated his explanation. "He provides tactile stimulation during high-stress events, wakes me from nightmares, and creates a calming presence." The line behind them was growing longer, the murmurs louder. He could feel eyes on him, some sympathetic, others clearly annoyed by the delay. Humiliation burned through him. "They think I'm faking, that Buddy is just a pet I'm trying to sneak through." The injustice of it made his hands clench. The first agent handed the papers back. "I'm not convinced, sir. We can't allow an animal through security if we're not certain it's a legitimate service animal performing a necessary task for air travel." Walter's heart sank. "But he is. I can't fly without him. He's recognized by the airline." He gestured vaguely towards the check-in counters he'd left minutes before. "They have to let him through. They just have to." The fluorescent lights seemed to beat down on him, magnifying his distress. Buddy whined again, a low, anxious sound that tugged at Walter's heart. He felt a bead of sweat trace a path down his temple. "Airline approval doesn't supersede TSA security regulations," the female agent stated, her expression now matching her colleague's skepticism. "You can either arrange for someone to pick up the dog, or you can forfeit your flight." Forfeit his flight. The words hit Walter like a physical blow. This trip was important. He was traveling to see his first grandchild. The thought of missing it, of having to turn back defeated, was unbearable. This can't be happening. There has to be a way. He looked around, a desperate plea in his eyes, hoping for some sign of understanding, some intervention. The other travelers mostly avoided his gaze. A supervisor was called, a stout man with a weary look. Walter had to explain everything again, his voice now hoarse with emotion and the effort of keeping his anger in check. He presented Buddy's training certificates, the doctor's letter, the airline confirmation that noted his service animal. Each document was scrutinized, passed from one agent to another. The supervisor listened, then examined Buddy, who sat patiently, his gaze fixed on Walter. The hum of the X-ray machine seemed to drill into Walter's skull. They're going to say no. I can feel it. The shame was a cold weight in his stomach. The documentation seems to be in order, the supervisor conceded slowly, but there have been incidents. We need to be absolutely sure. He then asked Walter to demonstrate one of Buddy's tasks. Walter felt a surge of indignation. Perform for them, like a circus animal? But he was trapped. He swallowed his pride. Buddy, pressure, he commanded softly. The dog, without hesitation, pressed his body firmly against Walter's legs, looking up with concerned eyes. Walter could feel the dog's warmth, the steady rhythm of his breathing. It was a small comfort in the midst of this public ordeal. The supervisor watched, then nodded curtly. All right, but the dog needs to go through a separate screening, and all his equipment, the harness, the leash, needs to be X-rayed. Walter's relief was minimal, quickly overshadowed by continued apprehension. He was directed to a sterile metallic table off to the side. An agent began to meticulously pat down Buddy's harness. Walter watched, his anxiety a tight band around his chest. Buddy endured the inspection with quiet dignity, but his eyes kept flicking towards Walter. The metallic click of the agent's scanner wand, passing over Buddy's harness, sounded unnaturally loud before the scanner itself beeped insistently over the dog's chest. The sharp, insistent beat from the agent's wand over Buddy's harness sent a fresh jolt of alarm through Walter Ramirez. What's that? Walter asked, his voice strained. The agent frowned, running the wand over the same spot on the harness again. Beep, beep. Oh no, what now? Is there something wrong with the harness? Buddy shifted uncomfortably, unused to this level of scrutiny. There seems to be something metallic here, sir, the agent said, his tone suspicious. Walter's mind raced. The harness was standard, made of nylon and some padded material, with metal clips, yes, but nothing that should cause this kind of focused alarm. He felt the eyes of other passengers, delayed and curious, boring into him. A young woman, standing a few feet away in the slowly moving line, had her phone angled subtly towards Walter and the unfolding drama. She'd been recording since the supervisor arrived, her expression a mixture of outrage and concern. As the scanner beeped repeatedly, she captured Walter's look of bewildered frustration and the agent's probing. With a few quick taps, she uploaded the short video to her social media feed, adding a caption, "Veteran being harassed by TSA over his legitimate service dog. Airport authorities questioning his every move. This is an outrage. #service dog #veteran rights #airport nightmare." The video, raw and immediate, began to circulate almost instantly among her followers, the algorithm picking up on the keywords and the evident conflict. Walter, oblivious to his sudden online notoriety, was trying to explain the harness. "It just has standard metal D-rings and buckles," he said, gesturing towards the clips. "Can I show you?" The agent hesitated, then nodded. Walter unclipped the harness carefully, his hands fumbling slightly. He laid it on the table, pointing out the metallic parts. "They're making this so difficult. It's never been like this before." He felt a deep weariness settle over him. Buddy, now free of the harness, stayed close, nudging Walter's hand for reassurance. The supervisor watched, his arms still crossed, his expression unreadable. He could see the growing queue and hear the grumbles. The agent meticulously examined the harness away from Buddy, then put it through the X-ray machine separately. It passed without issue. The clips must have been layered in a way that set off the wand, the agent conceded, though without apology. They then directed Walter to take Buddy through the metal detector without his harness or leash, while they X-rayed his collar and leash. Walter walked through, Buddy at his heel. Clear. He waited on the other side, feeling exposed and humiliated as Buddy's collar and leash came through the X-ray. The sterile scent of the place felt suffocating. Just let this be over. He was finally allowed to put Buddy's collar and leash back on, but the agents still seemed reluctant. "You'll need to keep him under strict control at all times, sir. Any issues, and you'll be reported to the airline staff at the gate," the supervisor warned, his voice stern. Walter just nodded, too drained to argue further. He gathered his carry-on, his hands still shaking slightly, and quickly moved away from the security checkpoint, Buddy trotting closely beside him. He didn't make eye contact with anyone, the shame burning his cheeks. He just wanted to disappear. He found a quiet corner near a departure screen and sank onto a hard plastic chair. Buddy immediately rested his head on Walter's lap, whining softly. Walter stroked the dog's fur, the simple act a small anchor in his turmoil. He pulled out his phone, intending to text his daughter that he'd made it through security, but his hands were trembling too much. He took a deep breath, then another. He saw his reflection in the darkened screen of his phone, a tired, stressed old man. He quickly put on the sunglasses he kept in his shirt pocket, trying to hide his face, to become anonymous. "I just need to get on that plane. I need to see my granddaughter." The thought was a distant comfort. Meanwhile, the video posted by the young woman was rapidly gaining views and shares. Comments poured in, overwhelmingly supportive of Walter and critical of the TSA's handling of the situation. One of the people who saw the retweeted video was an off-duty gate agent for the same airline Walter was flying, scrolling through her feed while on her break. Recognizing the airport, the uniform of the TSA agents, and then, with a shock, the flight number visible for a split second on a discarded boarding pass in the video's background garbage can, she realized this was happening for an imminent departure. She immediately forwarded the video link to her colleagues working Gate B12, Walter's gate. Aboard Maverick Airlines Flight 307, Captain Eva Rostova was going through her pre-flight checklist in the cockpit. Boarding had commenced 10 minutes earlier. Her first officer was liaising with the ground crew. A flight attendant, a young man named Ben, hurried into the cockpit, his face creased with concern. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, holding out his tablet. Displayed on the screen was the viral video of Walter and Buddy at the security checkpoint. Captain Rostova watched, her expression hardening from professional calm to visible dismay, then to a steely resolve. She recognized the acute distress on Walter's face, the quiet dignity of the service animal. She listened to Ben explain how the gate agent had just received the video, alerted by an off-duty colleague who'd seen it online. Apparently, the passenger, Walter Ramirez, had been cleared through security eventually, but was deeply shaken. The gate agent also mentioned he hadn't arrived at the gate yet, despite his flight being well into its boarding process. "This isn't right," Captain Rostova thought. "That man is a veteran, and that dog is clearly a lifeline." She knew the regulations regarding service animals. They were permitted, encouraged even, for those who needed them. Protocol was one thing, but basic human decency was another. Her mind was made up in an instant. This was her flight, her responsibility. "Is Mr. Ramirez at the gate yet?" she asked Ben. "The gate agent says no, Captain. They're about to make a final boarding call." Eva Rostova unbuckled her seatbelt. "Tell them to hold the final call for a few more minutes. I'm going to find him." Her voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. She had a responsibility to her passengers, and that included ensuring a veteran wasn't being mistreated or left behind due to bureaucratic overreach or insensitivity. The murmur of passengers settling into their seats in the cabin behind her faded as she focused on what needed to be done, her footsteps already quickening as she moved from the cockpit. Captain Eva Rostova moved with swift purpose from the cockpit, through the first-class cabin, and down the narrow aisle of the main cabin, her expression resolute. Passengers looked up, a little surprised to see the pilot striding through the plane mid-boarding. She offered a tight, professional smile to a few, but didn't pause. Reaching the open aircraft door, she spoke briefly to the lead flight attendant. "I'm stepping out to address a passenger issue. Keep boarding, but hold the door for me." Without waiting for a reply, she stepped onto the jet bridge, her pilot's cap firmly in place, her shoes clicking purposefully on the metal floor as she headed back towards the gate, and beyond that, the security checkpoint. The gate agent looked startled as Captain Rostova approached. "Captain, is there a problem with the aircraft?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "The aircraft is fine, a passenger isn't," Rostova replied curtly. "Mr. Walter Ramirez, the gentleman with the service dog, the one held up at security. Where is he?" The agent pointed vaguely towards the main terminal concourse. "He passed security, but he looked very upset. He hasn't come to the gate." The video was still open on the agent's monitor. Rostova glanced at it. "No wonder he's upset. He was treated abysmally." Her determination hardened. "He's a passenger on my flight. I'm going to find him." She walked briskly through the bustling gate area, her eyes scanning the crowded waiting areas and shops. She spotted him then, tucked away in a corner, the golden retriever lying faithfully at his feet. Walter Ramirez looked defeated, his shoulders slumped, sunglasses still obscuring his eyes. Captain Rostova approached him, her demeanor softening slightly as she took in his evident distress. "Mr. Ramirez," she said gently. Walter looked up, startled. Seeing the pilot's uniform, a flicker of apprehension crossed his face. "Oh, what now? Are they going to tell me I can't board after all?" Buddy, sensing a new presence, raised his head, alert but not aggressive. "My name is Captain Eva Rostova. I'm the pilot of your flight to Denver today," she continued, her voice calm and kind. "I was made aware of the difficulties you experienced at the security checkpoint. I want to apologize for the way you were treated." Walter stared at her, momentarily speechless. He slowly removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were red-rimmed and weary. "The pilot, coming to find me? I didn't think anyone noticed," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "Or cared," he added, almost in a whisper. Buddy nudged his hand, and Walter absently stroked the dog's head. "Some of us notice, Mr. Ramirez, and some of us care very much," Rostova said, her gaze unwavering. "Your service animal is welcome on my aircraft. In fact, I'd be honored if you and Buddy would join me in first class." Walter's jaw dropped. First class? After all this? He didn't know what to say. Tears welled in his eyes, threatening to spill. "I don't understand," he managed. "It's a gesture of respect, Mr. Ramirez, for your service to this country and for the dignity you've shown today under duress," Rostova explained simply. "Now if you're ready, let's get you on board. We have a schedule to keep, but some things are more important than strict adherence to timelines when compassion is required." She offered him a hand to help him up. Walter hesitated for a moment, then took it, his grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Captain," he said, his voice choked with gratitude. "Thank you," Rostova smiled. "My pleasure, Mr. Ramirez. Let's go." She turned to lead the way. But as they approached the security checkpoint again, intending to use a crew lane to bypass the main lines directly to the gate, the same TSA supervisor who had given Walter such a hard time stepped forward, his expression stern. "Captain, I understand your sentiment, but this passenger and his animal were subject to standard screening. Civilian passengers can't use crew access points." Captain Rostova faced the supervisor, her posture unwavering. "This passenger is under my personal escort," she stated, her voice leaving no room for argument. "He is a decorated veteran with a legitimate service animal, and he has already endured an unwarranted and excessive screening process that caused him considerable distress, a situation my airline is now aware of at the highest levels, thanks to a viral video of your team's conduct." The supervisor's face tightened. He knew when he was beaten, or when a fight wasn't worth the escalating repercussions, especially if airline officials and negative publicity were now involved. He glanced at Walter, then at the pilot's determined face. "The animal has been screened," the supervisor said stiffly, effectively conceding but trying to maintain a semblance of authority. "Proceed to your gate." He stepped aside. Captain Rostova gave him a curt nod, then turned back to Walter with a reassuring smile. "This way, Mr. Ramirez." She led him and Buddy past the security checkpoint, through the now less crowded gate area, where other passengers for Flight 307 were already mostly boarded. The gate agent who had alerted her gave a small discreet thumbs up as they passed. Walter walked a little taller now, the weight of the earlier humiliation beginning to lift. Captain Rostova personally escorted Walter and Buddy onto the aircraft. As they stepped inside, the flight attendants greeted them with warm smiles. She led them through the galley and into the quiet, spacious first-class cabin. "This seat here, Mr. Ramirez," she said, indicating a comfortable window seat near the front. "Buddy will have plenty of room at your feet." Walter carefully settled into the plush leather seat, a wave of disbelief and profound relief washing over him. Buddy curled up on the carpet below, letting out a contented sigh, as if sensing the ordeal was finally over. Walter looked out the small airplane window, then back at Captain Rostova, who stood for a moment in the aisle beside him. He wanted to express the depth of his gratitude, but words failed him. He simply nodded, his eyes conveying what he couldn't speak. Captain Rostova understood. She gave him a respectful nod in return, then a warm, genuine smile. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Ramirez," she said softly, before turning to head back to the cockpit, her footsteps echoing briefly in the quiet cabin, before she disappeared beyond the curtain, leaving Walter Ramirez and Buddy bathed in the calm light of the first-class cabin.